Shaun. Can you hear us, Shaun?
Sure.
Hey, what's up? I hear you have...
What's going on, guys?
Yeah, I have a note here saying you wanted to talk about the existence of a real God.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so tell me more about that.
Okay, so we do agree that our bodies are powered by energy, correct?
Powered by energy.
Yeah, like it's electrical pulses inside our body that makes everything work.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Not quite electrical pulses, but I think that's just kind of nitpicky. But yeah, I mean, energy.
Right,
that's
right.
Energy is what's causing
know.
our bodies to move.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So we both agree that energy can't be destroyed. It just is dispersed into the universe or whatever after it's used for whatever it's used for.
Well, before you keep going, and I am interested in what you have to say, but let me ask you this.
Okay.
Is this, I'm assuming you're presenting it like a syllogism to be like an argument. Is this argument the reason why you believe a God exists? Like, is this your biggest reason?
Yeah, this is. I'm actually skeptic, but this is the reason why I believe that there is a God. Now, it may not be a sentient being as far as the Bible is portraying, but maybe in the past with past civilizations, they realized that the energy that's in our bodies, the energy that's all over the universe, or all around us, is they worship that as a God. And we are all part of it. Do you believe that there's a such thing as positive and negative energy?
Not really.
It depends on exactly how you're defining those things. If you give some kind of emotional quality to positive and negative.
Okay,
or something,
so let's say you and a friend were sitting having lunch. I don't want to go too far, but say you and a friend were sitting having lunch, and you guys were having a nice, good conversation. Everything is happy and whatever, and then someone comes around you, and without even knowing that person or knowing their intentions, you can kind of feel a negative vibe from that person.
Yeah, but that's just vibes, though. That's not the same energy that's powering our bodies, right?
But I'm saying there is no way that we can say that our energies don't interact independent from our thoughts with each other. You know what I'm saying? It's like your positive energy.
Well, I wonder, is there a way that you could think of scientifically testing that? Because that seems like something that could be within the realm of science, right?
Maybe.
So I think the way I would go about determining
I'm
that.
not sure.
You say you're not a scientist, so you're not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. But I think the way that I want to go about that, if I really wanted to feel like I had a strong grasp on, like our energies somehow intermingle, then I would want to figure out how to scientifically test that. We have to define energy. We have to figure out what all of the confounding variables that might be there that would interfere with our experiment. And then once we've defined those energies, see whether or not they interfere with each other in some way based on a certain kind of interaction.
Aside from testing it, but we do, as humans, we do feel that, and we do know that it exists in sort of a way, whatever. It's saying existence is like our definition that we made to, perceive what's going on around us and things that we understand, but we can't use our definitions for things that we have no understanding for, correct?
That was a lot. I'll be honest with you. My mind is more focused on how this relates to God in any way, because I'll agree with you that like energy exists, but what is the connection between energy and God? Okay,
so how do we know that energy is not God? I'm not saying that it is, but how can we say that it's not?
Well, doesn't that entirely depend on how you define God?
Well, that was what I was saying from the earlier part. Okay, so maybe when the first thought of we have a maker or whatever came into being, into human thought process, that
now you're talking about explaining makers and stuff, right? So I need you to help me out here because I need to understand how you're, the observation that there's energy and that that exists, does it necessarily preclude to me that there is a maker or like a creative force But
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that energy. All right. Let's take the God of the Bible and completely forget about that. That's not what I'm talking about. But the way that came about is because of, different interpretations.
what do you mean the way that came about? What are you talking about? What's the they?
You know how people formulated that God was sentient and that, whatever God you believe in, when the first thought that God was a sentient being was transcribed from something that was there before people thought that God was a sentient being, because people may have been, worshiping the energy that powers the universe instead of a being. And that was what they referred to as, quote unquote, God, the energy that powers everything in the universe.
Okay, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. So people had these kind of intonations for a long time that there's this energy, there's this force, maybe a sentience behind the universe. There's something there that, not necessarily making it personified, but there's something intentional about everything. There's agency behind all of the things that we see in the universe. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. That's what. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so people saw that, and then they formulated these ideas of like the biblical God, or just the Abrahamic.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I want to make sure I get that. So, yeah, maybe people did seek some kind of agency. They thought there must be something behind this. There's something bigger that we're not understanding here. So,
right.
Is it justified to then say, because it seems like to me, I have this intuition to me that there's something behind this, there's some agency here, that must mean that there is an agency there. Is that intuition that people had for, maybe all of humanity, is that sufficient to say that there actually is something to that?
Well, what I'm saying that there is something to it, because it's something that we experience as far, and we can use that energy, we can feel it, but I'm not advocating for, the God of the Bible, but
yeah,
there is something that powers the universe, that powers us, and that when we die, the energy that is in us goes back to. So we're a part of that for an eternity.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying,
you understand what I'm saying?
Well, so there's energy, and it exists in a system, and you're saying when we die, we take that energy back, and it goes back into the system, right? Because energy is not created or destroyed, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of, I am still a little bit confused, because I just don't know what, I mean, are you just calling the energy God, or what is the God part of that? Is it something supernatural? Because you're describing something natural to me, right? Like, it seems that energy.
All right. So who? That's what I'm saying. Let's take the God of the Bible off the table.
Yeah. We're not talking about the God of the Bible.
Yeah, there's plenty of other ideas.
With your definition.
But what I'm saying about that is that we don't have to be speaking in supernatural to be referring to God. God is supernatural in the Bible, but we don't have to be speaking in supernatural to be speaking of the part of us that is everything.
So your God in this scenario, like, this could be something that a total philosophical naturalist could believe in. You don't have to believe in anything supernatural to believe in this kind of God that you're defining.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the line between something that you would just call, a non-sentient, inanimate energy, and something that you would call a God? What's the defining thing that makes this maybe natural energy a God? Because maybe this is just a definitional thing. I don't know.
Because of the people who use God as supernatural, the reason that they say it's God, because it's the creation of everything. But they attribute it to something supernatural when most of the time the truth is right in front of your face. You just have to see it, right? So God isn't a supernatural being that judges us for what we do. God is the one thing that powers everything.
Okay, so I think that, yeah, I think I understand your definition of God here. I guess I just wonder, why would we call something that is a natural force a God?
Why does God have to be supernatural?
Okay, I mean, that's kind of a cool question.
That is an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a cool question. Maybe it doesn't have to be supernatural. So why would we call something that you're defining here a God? Like what's your argument for calling this natural force a God if we say that, yeah, it does exist just for sake of argument?
Because it's the one thing, like I said, the one thing that powers everything. Everything you can see, everything you can hear is powered by that energy, and it's all over the universe.
So are we just saying that God is just whatever powers everything? Is that the delineation that we're making?
Yeah, that right. And you could say that the energy is per the Big Bang, the energy is the creation of the universe, right?
Okay. I mean, you could use this language, but ultimately I think it kind of becomes a language thing. And, when I am trying to decide what kind of the words that I'll use when I'm trying to describe something myself, do you think that the word God is the thing that will best communicate your conception of, a God or an all-powerful force that's behind everything? Is that going to be the best word for you to use? And, I don't advocate necessarily either way for you to use, but do you find it more, or do you think people find it more confusing when you call this natural force a God than if you just said this is a natural force that's behind everything?
Okay, so me using God is to correlate, to people who do believe in the supernatural God, what I'm trying to say, excuse me. So the reason I use God is because that's the term that humans use to explain the creator or whatever they believe to be an all-powerful and almighty, blah, 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 right?
Well,
So
okay, but I want to ask you a
God.
clarifying question. Do you think that this force that you're talking about has agency?
Meaning?
Like it's sentient?
It makes choices.
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't think it's a being I just think that it is the power of the universe. To put it, as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it confusing to people, because most people, when describing a God, they're describing something that it has an agency and can make decisions and can do things. And you're describing something that can...
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying earlier about, the languages dying and people using different interpretations and, stuff like that. That's how it became misconstrued into the God of the Bible today.
Well, okay, but that's what's different, right? Because the God of the Bible has agency, and it can make choices and do these things. So how can you say that these are the same things when they have completely different qualities?
What I'm saying is they aren't the same thing, but what I'm saying is, could that energy, the same way people look at God as being the Alpha and the Omega, right? Could this energy be looked at as the same thing? Just, like you, all right, so say you saw a car riding down the street, and then your friend saw the same car as it turned the corner on a different street, and you got together and you said, hey, man, did you just see that car? And he says, oh, yeah, it had these many wheels on it. It had this color paint and all that. But you saw the same car, but your perception of it was different. Oh, it was a black car with, 4 wheels. So it's the same car. You guys just have different views and interpretations on that same car. But it's still that thing that passed you and passed your friend. You just talk about it differently.
Yeah, I understand, people talking about different things based on, maybe slightly different perceptions or just different preferences in describing things. I just wonder if using this word is going to end up not working in your favor, because I don't think that we have so much, I don't think we have so much difference. I think that we share a lot of kind of ideas in common. I maybe wouldn't say there's like this energy that there's like a unified equation that unified all the branches of physics and everything. I don't know about a unified force, but I think that we have a lot of ideas about naturalism in common. But do do you think ultimately that saying this and describing it this way is going to get you further in arguments or further in, not necessarily arguments, just conversations, because of the conflation that can happen here? I mean, just look how long we've had to talk about what God means. I mean, of course, you're free to use your own definitions and everything and explain it, and I think this has been a really interesting conversation, but I just wonder the utility of that. Now, I totally get your point of saying that, yeah, this natural force maybe is something that people are observing and then calling God, and then they're tacking on a whole bunch of other traits to it that aren't necessarily there, but that's their confused perception. I just wonder how useful this actually is to talk about and to hold fast to. Maybe for some people you can call it God if you think it's going to get you further. Some people like us maybe don't.
Yeah, like I'm not going to.
When I say God, you understand what I'm talking about, though, right?
I don't think so. I think we had to
because-
clarify quite a bit.
I mean generally, not like specifically. Exactly what I mean. But when I say God, to what I'm referring to.
Well, if you just mean energy, then I would assume you would just call it energy.
If you would have said, I think there's a natural force that underlies everything, I think I would have understood what you said pretty much immediately. But saying God, it doesn't necessarily, click for me. Maybe it would for some people, but not for me.
I mean, that's semantics. Me calling it God or whatever, a force of energy. But I'm saying, the same argument still applies. What I'm saying, though, right?
If your argument being that this exists, therefore God exists.
Yeah, I think energy exists for sure, but whether you make any...
And can that energy be God? Can that energy be God?
I don't think so, because Drew and I mean very specific things that we're talking about God. And if we're just talking about natural forces, I don't see a reason to call it a God. I don't understand the purpose of the definition.
You can call anything if you want, if you, want to use your own definitions.
Like I can call this cone God because,
But that will get really confusing for everyone else that doesn't consider the cone God.
Right. Like, okay, like what happens if I call this cone God? What does it change about anything in my life? Nothing really. It's just, it's just kind of there.
But energy isn't just kind of there. I mean
it's what there.
I mean? It's something. It's doing something.
This cone is doing something too. Look, it's sitting on Drew's head. That's real. I mean, it doesn't really matter though.
Yeah.
I just don't know that the acknowledgement that a force behind everything in the universe will necessarily change my ideas about my own definition of a God.
Yeah.
It wouldn't change my mind on that because they're just not the same thing.
Right.
The only thing I've learned is that you call this thing God, which, I mean, fine. It doesn't influence me to change my ideas about God.
Right. If you're trying to convince us, and I think other people, I don't think it would be, I don't see the argument to be very effective.
Okay. Well, that's all I want to do is get you guys' opinion on it, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for calling.
I actually thought this call was kind of cool.
That was different than what I thought.
Yeah. We appreciate your open-mindedness and everything, and if someone's like, I'm not sure where to go from here, saying that is so respectable rather than just bullshitting and making up some reason why you're right and the person you're talking to is a moron. So thank you for being cool, and hopefully we'll talk to you another time.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, thank you guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right. That was fun.
Cool call.
Yeah. That was really
not at all what I thought it was going to be at the beginning.
No, I didn't think it was. I thought he was going to add all these things onto it, and maybe he does, but I don't know. That's the thing with definitions.